Staying healthy, staying sexy, staying young is what living life is all about. And if you have doctors that have proven treatments that keep people young and healthy so they don't get sick, you want people to know about these treatments and that they exist.
Hello, this is Mark L. White with Health Hacks. And coming up today, we have Cynthia Thurlow. She is an expert on intermittent fasting. She's literally written the book on intermittent fasting. And you've probably seen her on TED Talks talking about that. This podcast is brought to you by GainsWave. GainsWave is a treatment done at your doctor's office to optimize erection quality without the need of Viagra, Cialis. It's non-surgical, there's no needles, and it has an amazing success rate. To find a GainsWave provider, go to gainswave.com. That's GAINSWAVE.com. Hello, this is Mark L. White with Health Hacks, and I am talking today to nurse practitioner Cynthia Thurlow. How are you, Cynthia?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. I'm about to have lunch in about 30 minutes, and I've actually been trying intermittent fasting, and I know that you're one of the experts on fasting.
How are you feeling this morning? So you're fairly new. How long have you been doing it?
Off and on, because I think I have my cheat days, and I just got back from a vacation, but I try to do it at least 6 days a week.
That's awesome. I find that most people do best when it's a consistent thing, meaning doing it most days of the week. But the really great thing is you can always get back, you can get back into that habit, even if you've just returned from vacation or if you're on vacation. I always think it's a great way to kind of reset everything. All the things, all the indulgences that we do on vacation, you can kind of swipe them away when you get back into your fasting routine.
So how long does it take usually for somebody to notice the effects of intermittent fasting?
I think it really depends if you're a man or a woman. I seem to find that most men will see some of the benefits a little bit faster. By that, I mean generally with fat loss. So I would say at a minimum 30 to 60 days. If people after 60 days aren't seeing results, I start to dig a little deeper to figure out what may be mitigating them seeing the weight loss issues. That's generally why people gravitate towards intermittent fasting. That's usually what they're most focused on. And then all the other benefits come from there. But I would say 30 to 60 days for most. I find most men see the benefits a little earlier than women. They seem to have a much easier time losing weight. And then they get hooked because they feel so good. You know, they lose some weight, they have a little bit more mental clarity. All of a sudden they're sleeping better, their bloating's gone, all really kind of benign things. But when you add them all together, really have a large impact.
At the end of the day, like when we're talking about intermittent fasting, we see 16 hours of fasting, 8-hour window. I've seen take a day off from eating, take 2 days off from eating.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a better plan?
There's lots of different variations. Again, I think consistency is really helpful. I mean, one of the ones that some people will kind of, if they're dipping their toe in the pond with, intermittent fasting, they might do a 5-2, which is 5 days of eating their normal meals and then 2 days of 500 to 600 calories. Now, that wouldn't be my first choice. I'd rather just skip a meal once a day. But that's one variation that can be very effective for, kind of dipping your toe into the pond, if you will. I do find that men and women seem to gravitate either into one of two camps. They seem to prefer the 16-8 or 18-6 or the warrior diet, which is one meal a day, which I have tried. And I do think there's value in doing longer fasts for people that have more weight to lose or feel like they really need a reset. We, on our podcast, we actually did an interview with a gentleman named Simlan. He's Estonian, and he's written this amazing book called Metabolic Autophagy. And so he's a big biohacker. And I was asking him what his feelings were about doing longer fasts. And he said he thinks every quarter we should do a 2 or a 3 day fast, which I think is probably reasonable. But I think if you're already at your goal weight, if you aren't really having tremendous cravings, I think doing 1 24-hour fast a month is reasonable. But there is data to show the longer the fast, the more anti-aging benefits. But a lot of people struggle beyond the 2 to 3 day mark to do that.
And why do you think intermittent fasting is just really hot right now compared to, say, 10 years ago?
I think people are finding that these diets, whatever the trendy diet du jour is, are not sustainable. And I believe people are looking for real life strategies that have science backing the research behind the claims that are made. And I think, well, I always use the people are tired of buying potions and powders because we've been led to believe for so long that we don't know how to feed ourselves, that we don't know how to eat. The processed food industry has kind of swiped all of that away for us. And I believe fasting gives people some power back. They feel powerful. They feel that they have some degree of control. And once they get that intermittent fasting combined with satiety, figuring out what foods satiate their body, then they have phenomenal success. So I do think it's in response to our highly processed, highly overwhelmed, highly stressed environment that we're living in, that people are looking to kind of reconnect with a more ancestral approach, because obviously fasting is not new. It's become popular, I think, because people are having such great results, but it's obviously dated back to biblical times. So not new. And most religions have some degree of fasting that is included in their teachings. So definitely it's not something that's brand new, but obviously, as you said, has become more popular over the last several years for sure.
And what does the research show? Like when we fast, what are the benefits?
Well, people always go for the fat loss, but they stay for all the other benefits. So we know that you have better brain clarity because your insulin levels are low, and we want our insulin levels to be low. Unlike when we're eating all day long and we're spiking insulin all day long, it can become a fat storage hormone. We know that it lessens our likelihood of developing neurologic disorders, things like Alzheimer's, which I think of as type 3 diabetes, as well as Parkinson's. We know that it improves our fasting, glucose, so our fasting sugars, improves blood pressure, improves our cholesterol panels. It definitely can be hugely beneficial for people that are, if you're transitioning from a more standard American diet, having more digestive rest. So people that are dealing with digestive disorders. And so the big ones are insulin resistance. I always remind people that in our over-harried, overstressed, obese environment that most of us are residing in, the degree of metabolic disorders, metabolic syndromes like insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, diabetes are the things that it is most beneficial for, obviously in conjunction with a well-trained healthcare provider. But the research definitely purports and supports, and there's even some research to suggest that it can lessen your likelihood of developing cancer because, autophagy is this term that's utilized, but it's really talking about scavenging up diseased and disordered cells while we're fasting, only occurs while we're fasted. And so, sometimes there is research to suggest that cancer or cellular growth that has gone awry. And so this is giving our bodies longer periods of time to clean up the waste. It's kind of like the garbage truck that pulls up and takes your trash can and takes off. Very similar in the body, that we're getting rid of the items that could potentially be disease state cells, but cells that are disordered, fragmented, and that are just scavenged up and removed from the body. So a really, really cool scientific nerdy term that I like to kind of interject in these kinds of conversations.
I like that. Atrophy cells and getting rid and flushing the body. Calorie restriction. We know that that's proven for longer life.
Mm-hmm.
Is fasting, intermittent fasting, just another way of restricting calories, or is there something magical about taking that time off?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And there's a lot of misnomers because sometimes people say, "Oh, it's just because you're eating less calories." And I always remind them, no, it's about that you are giving your body digestive rest. You're giving your body time to digest. You are giving your body time to evoke autophagy. So it's not about the calories. I know we're a very calorie focused society, and I'm even someone that, I always say CICO, calories in, calories out. That's old, antiquated dogma. I don't worry about calories. I just say eat to satiety, eat until you're full and your appetite will shut off. It's not about going, oh, I have to have 500 calories in a meal. It's eat until you are, your body says I'm full, and you will stop eating and you will lose weight that way. So it's not a calorie deficit issue. It is an intermittent fasting's magic really works in the benefits that occur when you have sustained lower insulin levels, you have more digestive rest, you eat in response to true intrinsic hunger as opposed to, oh, it's lunchtime, I've got to eat. So you just have better command and better intuitive sense of your body and what true intrinsic hunger actually feels like. And we've gotten so disconnected from our bodies that we really don't know what that feels like anymore.
So, like during my 8 hours that I can I eat whatever I want?
Well, yes and no. I would say, obviously, I always want you to focus on, good quality protein and healthy fats, and then adding in carbohydrates. I always say, if you've earned them. I'm not anti-carb, although I do ascribe to a low carbohydrate diet because that's what works best for me. But if the option is to eat something like I just described or eat the standard American diet, I would always say quality of food is always critical. It's like buy what your budget permits you to buy. So I'd rather someone have pastured pork or grass-fed beef or wild caught fish as opposed to a McDonald's hamburger, or which is highly processed, highly addictive, and full of a lot of things that won't degrade. Anything that can sit on a counter and won't get moldy or spoil, those are the things we want to avoid eating as much as possible. I am, however, realist. And so I acknowledge that it's all about moderation, not deprivation. So if 80% of the time you're eating a very high quality diet, and then you go out to dinner, you go on vacation, you enjoy yourself, you come back to that high quality diet. When you've had your fun, you come back to that high quality diet. And generally what I find is people, once they start eating a nutrient dense diet, they don't have the desire to eat a highly processed diet anymore. Their taste buds have become very attuned to how sweet a piece of fruit tastes, or what a piece of grass-fed meat tastes like, as opposed to something that comes in a box, a bag, or a can. And so I think that's really empowering. People realize that the addictive food qualities that we have in the processed food industry, that it's like the monkey is taken off your back. You have control of food as opposed to food having control of you.
It would seem like if we're getting back to our ancestral roots, paleo diet would make more sense because,
Yes.
I guess people back then would wake up and go hunting for food. They would find their
Mhm.
food. They would eat their food at night. They'd probably drink a little bit of alcohol with their food. Can you drink intermittent fasting? Can you drink after 8 p.m. when your window shuts off? Can I have my vodka and tonic?
Yeah. So I would say, if you know that you're going to a party, or that, it's Friday or Saturday night and you'd like to enjoy a drink, I would say just adjust your feeding window. So if you know that normally you'd like to have a drink at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, then, start your feeding schedule a little later than you would normally. Here's the other thing. What I don't like people to do is be incredibly rigid when they do intermittent fasting. So if you have a day where your feeding window is 9 or 10 hours, that's okay. Get back to your normal, pattern the following day or the day after. Don't beat yourself up. I think that's the other thing, is we've gotten very rigid and we're very focused on rules. And so there aren't a ton of rules with intermittent fasting. There are clearly certain things that won't break your fast, and most other things will. But if you want to enjoy a glass of alcohol, I say absolutely do it. Just adjust your feeding window so that you can enjoy that without any guilt.
So tell me about yourself. How did you get into this from being a nurse practitioner working for a cardiologist?
It's a good question. Probably when I became a parent and had children, one of my children has life-threatening food allergies. It made me really do a deep dive into how our food affects our health. And, I'm trained in primary care. So I'm trained in primary care despite only working in acute or emergency care as a nurse practitioner. And I read a book called The Unhealthy Truth by Robin O'Brien. I have no affiliation with it. It's just a book that completely changed my whole perspective on the world. And then it became the rabbit hole. Then I was hungry to understand more. My cardiologists that I worked with were very humored by how interested in food I was and how much I like to talk to my patients about it. But I think the tipping point for me personally came when I really started getting tired of writing so many prescriptions and feeling as if there were so many other ways I would like to empower my patients to stay healthy and well. And there wasn't time in my schedule to be able to spend an hour talking to someone about a low carb diet, or talking to them about their sleep quality, or talking to them about their stress management. I mean, you could talk very briefly, but you really couldn't dive into those conversations. So 4 years ago, I woke up one morning and just decided it was time to quit my job. And so I dove into becoming an entrepreneur, and really found a niche, working with strategies with women. And so from that, probably prior to when I initially left my MP job, I'd already started intermittent fasting, but I really became passionate about it when I started seeing so many women, seeing so many incredible results from such a simple strategy. I mean, that's the really cool thing about it, is it's free and it's flexible. So you don't have to be rigid. and you don't have to buy a potion or a powder or a pill to make it work. You can do that all on your own. So that's initially how things started for me. And then it's really kind of snowballed into lots of opportunities to speak to other entrepreneurs and health and wellness professionals about ways that I've been able to successfully really empower women and men too, because I always say, any female that works with me, she's got a significant other or husband or a brother or son, someone that's going to
You'll
benefit.
always take care of the husband. You get
Exactly.
you get her eating right.
Yep.
My wife does all, she takes care of the diet and what goes into our house, and we eat very healthy.
Perfect.
It's amazing to me how many practitioners don't understand diet.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're really not trained, and that's the unfortunate thing. So I trained at a big research institution, arguably one of the best in the country, if not the world. And I had little to no nutrition training. I actually went back and did my functional nutrition training because I was so passionate about it. And that was a great decision on my part, because that became really the focus of a lot of my life work. But most Western medicine trained providers, we just don't get that education. It's unfortunate, but we're also a society, traditional Western medicine focuses on symptoms. And so we're not looking for root cause. It's all disease-based training. And that's what all of us get, irrespective of what initials you have after your name. It's very similar in terms of the scope of Western medicine. So when you look at more functional training, functional nutrition, it's looking at, why did that happen? Let's dig a little deeper. Is it because you had leaky gut? Is it because you had a parasite? Is it because your stress is out of control? And that's, lending itself that you're now insulin resistant and have hyperpermeability of your gut and a whole slew of other problems.
Yeah, no, it seems like Western medicine and functional medicine are just at complete odds, and you don't see too many doctors or too many practitioners making the switch over.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm probably unusual that I'm in a space where I do have the opportunity to work with a lot of people that have made that transition, but I recognize I'm in a niche. With that being said, we obviously need Western medicine because, there are emergencies and urgencies, and that's where Western medicine really excels. Where Western medicine does not excel, in my humble opinion, is in prevention and chronic disease management. I think there's just different ways to go about it. And I never want to be critical of my peers, because I have had the opportunity to work with some just incredibly brilliant, compassionate people. And I certainly have benefited from, fantastic care. So I always want to make sure that I'm not being critical, but just saying that we have to think about health and wellness differently than we have been, because what we're doing now is not working. And obviously the fact that we have these rising, escalating obesity rates and metabolic disorders really typifies the fact that, the food is definitely a contributor, and we have to be having conversations with our patients.
What was it scary to leave your job 4 years ago and become an entrepreneur?
Yes, absolutely. I had absolutely no business training. I think that I have a strong desire to learn. So I have had incredible coaches and incredible other entrepreneurs that have obviously helped support me and my growth. But I also think that I've always been a little bit of a disruptor in a very healthy way, not disruptor and then I've been in jail or anything like that. But I clearly saw there was a need, and I had faith that I was going to be guided in the best possible way. And every crazy decision, as my husband would call it, has really worked out well. So I always say that, I think each one of us has a little budding entrepreneur in us. The question is, do we listen to that voice that's telling us there's a different way? Or are we playing it safe? And so for me, am very grateful that my husband has a very stable, job. And so we could weather a couple of years until I was profitable, the opportunity to explore that. And obviously it's paid off really nicely in so many different ways. So I'm very, very grateful. But yes, it was definitely scary, largely because, they don't teach you any skills that I had to learn on my own as an entrepreneur. I just learned them as I was going. And now I could teach other people. But yeah, definitely. I mean, I look back and I'm like, that was really interesting that I weathered that so well. But yeah, definitely challenging.
It's amazing how it all works out in the end.
Mm-hmm. It definitely does. And I think having tremendous faith. I mean, I'm a very confident person. And I kept saying, if I put in the effort, if I align with the right people, if I, it's always connecting the dots. I mean, it doesn't seem like the dots connect retrospect when I'm looking at the time, but looking back, every dot connects now. There's a friend of mine, Jen Gottlieb, and so she always talks about connecting the dots after the fact.
Yep.
That all of a sudden you realize that that path was laid out for you because you took the path less traveled, because you were willing to do something a little different than perhaps a lot of other people were. And then just trusting that you're exactly where you're meant to be, whether it's a connection with the universe or God or whomever you believe in. But I truly believe I'm doing exactly the kind of work I was destined to do.
That's awesome. That's really
Thank you.
cool. So tell me, like, you did a TEDx talk.
I've done two. One was one kind of went a little bit crazy viral, and that was very unexpected because I had been in the hospital 4 weeks before that. I almost died. And I tell my kids I wanted to do the talk largely because I feel like intermittent fasting is such an incredible concept, but because I wanted to make sure my brain still worked. I'd been so sick and so debilitated. I'd lost 15 pounds. I mean, I was like a blob when I came home. And part of my recovery intellectually was that I want to do this talk. So sometimes I feel like the universe takes and the universe gives. And so that was a wonderful blessing that so many people have been able to be inspired by a talk that I gave. And so I sit in complete gratitude. I'm definitely someone that did not do a talk wanting that to happen. It was just completely unexpected, but it's really changed my life in so many wonderful ways. So I'm very, very grateful.
And you have a book coming out.
I do. I'm submitting the proposal actually when we get off our call. I'm actually going to submit that, and that's really exciting. And so yeah, lots of opportunities to continue to inspire and support people, and I love that. It makes my heart very full.
Awesome. So if somebody wants to be helped by you, do you help people one-on-one? Do you have a platform for helping people? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I do work one-on-one, although it's very limited. I have brought on a clinical psychologist and another advanced practice nurse to my business so that they can also kind of share in the joy. But I have group programs. I have an intermittent fasting program called IF45. I have some other group programs. And then, I've got a free Facebook group called Intermittent Fasting Lifestyle, and I'm pretty active on social media, as well as you can reach me on my website. We've got a podcast called Everyday Wellness that I co-host with Kelly Donahue, who's a clinical psychologist. So lots of ways to stay connected, lots of ways to hear a little bit more about opinions that I have on a variety of topics beyond intermittent fasting. But yeah, lots of ways to stay connected.
Besides intermittent fasting, what else are you passionate about?
I would say, well, there's a couple things. I would say with regard to women, it's, the limiting belief piece. I think women in many ways, whatever age they are, 35, 40, 45, 50 or beyond, the limiting beliefs about how our quality of life can be impacted by aging. So empowering women about aging in reverse, and doing that predominantly with, self-care and lifestyle strategies. Hormonal health, I'm really interested in the endocrine system. So thyroid, adrenals, sex hormones, brain health are of tremendous interest to me. And then, probably the other thing is I am a total wanderluster. So if you're asking me beyond the scope of my business, I love to travel. And so any opportunities I get to do so really kind of fuel that passion. But obviously my most important role in the world is for my boys. So being a mom is what I'm most passionate about at all. Like I always say, our children are a legacy to the world. And I want my boys to know that, you can do anything if you set your mind to it. In fact, I hear that a lot.
How old are your boys?
12 and 14. So they're now almost, well, one is taller, one is almost as tall as me, one weighs more than me. So they kind of, they're kind of looking physically down on me, not down on me otherwise, but really enjoying being a parent. I love that I have an all boy household. I always think God gives you what you need. And so my brother has all girls and I have all boys, and I get to learn so much about the male gender beyond which that I already knew. So it's wonderful.
Yeah, I have a 17-year-old boy and two girls. And the girls are 15 and 11. The boy's 17.
You got a busy household.
And it'll keep you busy. I love being a parent. I love traveling. It sounds awesome. So if somebody wants to learn more about your program, they visit you at cynthiathurlow.com.
Correct. Yep. That's probably the easiest way. I'm very active on Twitter is probably my platform I'm most active on, but I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. I'm all over. YouTube is still growing, but yeah, I'm all over the place.
Did you teach yourself social media or did your kids help you learn?
No, it's funny. They teach me more about YouTube. We know that's the second largest source of information on the internet. And so, they actually, ironically enough, teach me more about YouTube than I know. But most other things, I could school them. I always say I'm way ahead of the curve with regard to the power of, social media for proactive things as opposed to negative things. But yeah, they definitely know a heck of a lot more about YouTube. So they're usually my go-tos when I'm trying to figure something out. they know a lot more. But, here's the scary thing / good thing. I think it's great that this generation is growing up with access to information / it's terrible they're growing up with so much access to information because they grew up a whole lot faster than our generation did. And, having to protect them from things they aren't even aware that they need to be concerned about. That's usually the conversations that we're having. My kids are now on Instagram. And so going behind them on Instagram and going through their DMs and trying to explain to them that, there are bots and all sorts of other nonsense that goes on that tries to mess with people. So.
Yeah, no, I think the scary thing before was you had mainstream information and you didn't get all the facts. Now there are just too many facts. And the hardest thing is determine what are the real facts.
Right. Exactly. And it's certainly very challenging as a parent to navigate all that. Like I've got two great young men, but sometimes they don't know what they don't know. And so we have to have these kind of slightly uncomfortable conversations about, you don't friend anyone on Xbox that you don't know, and you have to physically know them, not like it's so-and-so's cousin. It has to be someone you've met in real life because there's so much predatory things that go on. And I know that's not the context of our discussion, but certainly as a parent, navigating all this and trying to allow them to have a little bit of freedom, but then reining them in and having to sometimes have those conversations that they have no sense of what they need to be concerned about. They're just very, they see the world from a very kind of innocent perspective. And, I live in a very nice community and in Washington, D.C. And I say all the time, you guys live in a bubble. You have no idea what's out there. And I'm grateful for that. But I'm also like worried that because you haven't kind of seen some of the other things that go on in the world, that you're going to be really surprised when you do realize what goes on. So
I think the best advice is anything sent over social media could become public one day.
Yes,
so make
I
sure
always tell them, yep.
Any pictures, anything, make sure that
really you'd be comfortable. Anyone
be
being
very private.
Yes. There was a cardiologist I used to work with, and at the time that he and I used to work together, my kids were probably in preschool, and he said he had 3 teenagers, and he said, I remind my children almost every day that anything that they take a picture of and they decide to send, they better be ready for it to be splashed across the entire world, because the opportunity always exists where photos can be stolen, photos can be shared without your permission. And, most especially don't take pictures of your privates. And he said, I can't believe I had to say this to my kids, but he said, I had boys and they just don't think. And I said, well, that's great. But yeah, there's a lot that goes on that, we just have to be really conscientious about as parents. But it's, we hope that we instill in them the virtues and the ability to make decisions that are to their benefit. And if not, hopefully it's not something that's going to be obscenely detrimental to their future. So
thanks for the time. Go get your book deal done. I know that's very important. That's very exciting.
Well, go get your lunch.
Yes, it's noon now, so my window just opened up.
Awesome. Well, enjoy your first breaking your fast. It's always like one of my favorite things to do during the day is to say, okay, I'm going to sit down and eat a meal, and I'm genuinely hungry and I feel great because I've been fasting for 16 plus hours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cynthia.
Such a pleasure.
Take care.
Thanks, you too.